What's up? What's happening? We are live from Indianapolis again. The NFL Scouting Combine, show 2 of 2. Although, man, we got a lot coming for you later in the week that we can't even fit on the show today. I would just, sorry to just tease everybody off the top here, but I literally talked to 3 of the best draft analysts in the game today, and we literally don't have time in the show to get to it. So we're going to do that on Friday. You will hear from ESPN's Matt Miller, The Athletic's Dane Brugler, and NFL.com's Lance Zierlein all later in the week on Friday. So you can look forward to that here on the Team 980. But as for today, I also sat down a little bit earlier with Marc Ross of NFL Network. He is we're gonna air that at 5:30. He is awesome always and was just absolutely delivered as he usually does. And Ben Standig is going to join us live at 5 to discuss the big news of the day, which is that the Commanders have done quite well for themselves when it comes to the NFLPA's annual report card. And we'll talk about the John Allen stuff and all the other pieces of news that DQ and everybody else made today around the Commanders with Ben at 5. But I remember a year ago sitting in this room. I was somewhere over there, as opposed to over here. The tables last year were flipped. This year they're horizontal. Last year they were vertical, if you will. So plenty has changed. But I remember sitting in this room, Hall J, in the Hoosier corridor of the Indianapolis Convention Center last year, when it just started like wildfire kind of going around the room. Oh, the NFLPA report card is out. The Commanders this, like the Chiefs that, and some of the teams that got passing, failing, whatever grades, and all the teams all of a sudden. I'm sure the coaches just absolutely love that this thing comes out on the day that they hold, or many of them hold their media availability, because then they get asked about it. And like DQ was asked about it today, and you'll hear from him in a moment. But I remember that the Commanders still had so many failing grades, and obviously Rivera was gone at that point a year ago, but this group had not really gotten the chance to get in and change anything. All those grades, as much, I don't want to say as much fun, as much as fans, some fans, not all fans, as much as some fans like latched on to, oh my God, nothing's changed because they got all these Fs all over the place, and Josh Harris hasn't changed this yet. Like the test is taken in October, and the grades come out in February, and literally nothing that was the reality of the moment was represented. Now, as the Commanders receive all kinds of passing grades, it's because the things that they have made changes on have actually taken hold. So there's a bunch of different areas that are graded here. The first thing is the one that actually, and Anthony, sorry to do this to you on the air. Do we have the Quinn bite? It was like the first thing he was asked about at the podium today. The first thing that DQ mentioned was actually the first grade that's on this list, the treatment of families, where last year I believe they had an F, and this year they get a B+. And Dan says like that is actually really not about him, and although we're going to get to some very specific DQ stuff in a moment, but about the people above him and what they have done.
The first thing I thought of, I was pleased to see treatment of families, and that goes to Josh, honestly, and Adam. There's no gap in between what he says and what he does, and so to have that type of reflection in a year is really big. We told him how important this was to us. He heard that from the players and then took action on that. And I think that's honestly like what that relationship has been for us. What do you need to win, and how do we go about and do that? And so to see things like family support and having that increase, that's really big. Families, our families, players, coaches, the organization, they make a lot of sacrifices for us to do what we can do. And so to have that right there, team travel, all those, to me, just reflect back to Josh and the vision of what it can be. And I couldn't be more proud to be a part of it.
And he's right. Those are a reflection of ownership, because you have to spend to fix those things, and those things, to do them right, cost money. They cost money in terms of facilities. They cost money in terms of having things available. Like if they have a family room at the game and they want food in it, that food costs money. They need people to staff it. They need people to make sure the interactions between the players' families and the organization are good. Like that involves human capital, which is salaried and paid for. It involves resources. It involves money, and you can put your money where your mouth is or not. And the Commanders got that grade from an F all the way up to a B+. Their food and dining area, they've made renovations in Ashburn, B+. Nutritionist, dietitian, C+. Be curious to read a little bit more about that. Locker room is an F. We'll come back to that. Training room, C+. We'll come back to that. Training staff, B+. Weight room, B-. Strength coaches, A. Team travel, A. Head coach, A+. Ownership, A. They, considering where they were a year ago, that is a remarkable amount of progress. Now, are they the worst team in the league in terms of locker room? Yep. Actually, no, because the Browns and Cardinals got F-. The Commanders got an F, the Broncos got an F, the Browns got an F-, and the Cardinals got an F-. Locker rooms are much bigger projects. It's a ton of space that has to get renovated versus some of the smaller spaces, and I would imagine that is on the to-do list. Especially now. If it wasn't already, it is now, but it's not good enough. They renovated it a couple years, like 7-8 years ago, to where it used to be just embarrassing. Like, a high school locker room that was built in the 70s at an NFL size. Like, it was terrible. And now they at least have modernized it, but clearly there's a long way to go. Do I think Josh Harris will make that investment and make that investment soon? Yeah. Yeah, I do. The other ones that I think are interesting to talk about, training room, same thing as locker room, but they've already made upgrades there. But can they get a bigger training room? Their weight room gets a B-. And what that tells you is, like, the infrastructure in Ashburn, the actual physical buildings, like, they need work. But they have plans to continue to do that. Like, I would say those grades are not probably a surprise to Josh Harris, a surprise to Dan Quinn, a surprise to Adam Peters. But the things that you can change quickly, the ways that the humans that are these people, that are the players, that are the players' families, interact with the organization, those are the things that graded out best. The outside of nutritionist, dietitian, which that one I'm curious to read more on. That's one that's worth double-clicking on, and I assume that they'll make changes if they feel like they need to. But training staff, B+. Strength coaches, A. They've been an A for years in Washington. Chad Englehart and his crew do a great job, and the players love them. Team travel, just upgrading how they get around and where they stay and all those kinds of things. Done. Head coach, A+, and obviously ownership, A. Like, they did as much as they could as quickly as possible while understanding that there are parts of this that are going to take time. And I think they just deserve a ton of credit. But the biggest one there is the A+ for Dan Quinn. Players talked about how he's efficient with their time. Obviously, the relationships and the brotherhood that he helped foster and develop. And I just think to the questions that we had a year ago. I was high on Quinn, and I think that was heavily influenced by what I heard from Dan, the interview that we did with him at the Super Bowl last year, obviously what I learned from Logan and how much Logan likes and respects Dan, and everyone else that I talked to, that I just couldn't find a bad word to be said about Dan Quinn. So I was high on him, but a lot of people have had to do the mea culpa. We've had some fun with it on the show where folks have called in and said, like, yep, I was one of the people that was really ticked that they hired Dan Quinn. I was wrong. Okay, fine. We all get takes wrong. But to see not just they didn't make a mistake, but they got one of the absolute best in the league. Wow. Like that, just think about even a year ago. Again, he hadn't managed a game yet. He hadn't run a practice yet. Like, this was all hope and what could be. And now we see what has been. He led them to the NFC Championship game. He rebuilt the culture within a year. I think the other thing he did is he was able to suss out, like, when you think of Terry McLaurin, Terry predates Dan, obviously, but, like, Terry is one of their guys. And so, they'll extend him. Sam Cosmi, they already did, right? They gave Sam the contract last fall. They figured out pretty quickly, like, oh, yeah, if we had been here then, he's a guy that we would have taken. He would have gotten the commander tag. And Dan and Adam, but Dan specifically, his ability to be in that locker room, to figure out who the right voices were to empower, the way he managed Jaden this year, just truly, truly, truly sensational. And he deserves that A+ grade and obviously all the success that came with it, probably already Already told you that. When we get back, you'll hear more from DQ as he stepped to the podium today here in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. Also, we had about a 15-minute scrum with him on the side amongst mostly local reporters. A couple national folks snuck in, and I was like, "Hey, get out of here! You don't belong here." But we had a good chat with DQ. Always says interesting stuff. So we'll get you some of that next. Then Rhett Lewis sits down live at 4:30 from NFL Network, the host of The Path to the Draft. So we'll talk to him about the upcoming draft class and what he's looking for this week here in Indy. And then at 5 o'clock, Ben Standig on all the latest Commanders news. We're rolling on a Wednesday on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, too, at the Team 980. Before we get to Dan Quinn bites, Anthony, I shouldn't make fun of this. This is me absolutely asking for it. But I may have just gotten one of the funniest emails you could possibly get in Indianapolis.
Was it from Shane?
What the hell's wrong with you?
My bad. I thought that would have been funny.
No, I mean, if anything from Shane is definitely funny. No, we got an email from the league saying that there is a media member that has lost a notebook. And if it is found, please text whatever the number is. And just the idea of a reporter losing a note, I mean, that is horrifying. Depending on, like, especially how you take your notes. Like, if you're someone who has the audio and whatever else is backup, okay, fine. But if you don't, and, like, that was the way that you doing it, or depending on what's on that notebook, I mean, if you have conversations with sources, whatever, like, that is legitimately terrifying. But I just, like, at this giant NFL media nerd convention that is this side of the NFL Combine, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Lost my notebook. And for someone, that nightmare has come true.
Yeah, that stinks. I'm not gonna lie.
I feel bad for them. I hope they find it. I hope it is found. I hope it is returned. I hope it is done with care. I hope no one's snooping notes. Just if there's a rogue notebook somewhere out here in Indianapolis, and I hope it's returned to its rightful owner.
Yeah, and I hope they don't get prank called because that number is now out there.
Yeah, well, I mean that ain't a big deal. By the way, also other funny bits from the combine. Get in here. Hold on. Tonight on NBC4, you got to be on this side if we're gonna do this as a video bit.
Get to reveal my...
Yeah, I want you, Anthony. I want you to look how good JP Finley looks right now.
I'll be honest. I'm not sure I'm pulling this off here.
So, look, he can probably see you better than
half of me.
Yeah, there you go. There's JP.
It honestly looks better on camera than it feels.
It feels a little tight. I know
tight.
that sweatshirt feels a little tight because it's my sweatshirt.
Right.
JP had to borrow your boy's
these are mine,
sweatshirt.
right?
Yeah, it's in exchange for the headphones. Here, hold on. Yeah, let's plug those in and
right.
You can hear.
So I'll explain to Ant. So Ant, Channel 4 has a valid rule that you can't wear like logos of teams or anything. And I didn't even think about it, and I was wearing a Terps quarter zip just with the big game tonight.
He's got the Terps tonight. By the way, Maryland basketball knocking us off the air at 6 for the pregame. Tip-off 6:30 here on the Team 980.
If you're
home
going
for
to the
Maryland
game,
basketball.
drive there now. And just be there early. I don't want
I'm so
any
sorry you're
empty
already
seats. I know, seriously. I feel like we could get there faster than somebody on the Beltway. So my options were pretty limited, and I had a hit in like 10 minutes in my hotel. The round trip to and from the hotel is probably a half hour.
Longer than 10 minutes.
So I said, Hoff, you got a jacket or something? Kind of just hoping he'd have like a light jacket I could put on over my quarter zip. Problem solved. Instead, I got this joint. So
it's a nice Lululemon waffle hoodie.
It's very nice. The chest up, I think I look kind of yoked. Like
it's
that's what I'm saying. I'm looking right now. I'm like, okay, JP, you been doing the curls? Like, what's up?
It looks good on the
You didn't even have to do push-ups before this.
No,
This is all natural right now.
And we got our times mixed up. I walk over there, and Kerwin's giving me this. Like, I had to sprint over there because I had like 40 seconds to do this. But it's definitely a little tight in the midsection. That's where Hoff and I I'll try to show the people on the stream. That's where I miss ab day fairly frequently, and I rarely miss pizza day. So it's a different combination. So I'm going to return this to Craig here.
Thank you. Thanks for your service to the entertainment business on our show. JP Finley in my sweatshirt. Everybody,
make sure he's gentle. Taking it off. You don't want to rip it.
Gentle taking it off. He was. He successfully he's removed it. Now, if I had to, he had. This is the most JP Finley outfit ever that he had on today because he's got a Masters T-shirt that he had to cover up with his Terps hoodie that then he had to borrow my sweatshirt to cover. Television and radio's JP Finley, everybody. Brett Lewis, he's on television as well. He's going to join us in about 7 minutes. Anthony, what's your favorite cut from DQ today? Which one of these? Which one of these do we now want to dive into? Since we have time for exactly one cut, because I get distracted far too easily, especially when I'm out in the wild.
I will say the most interesting probably had to do with Brandon Coleman and Mikey.
I think I agree with that. So this question was asked, I think it was asked by Sam Fortier, and he asked about
Ben Standig.
Standig. I know Sam was asking. Sam asked someone about this Peters about this yesterday, so that's why I got confused. Apologies to Ben, who's joining us at 5. Standig asked DQ, like, hey, last year Brandon Coleman finished the season at left tackle. Mike Sainristil finished the season at outside corner. Where do we see them going into the offseason? Here was the Commanders head coach.
I think I'll keep fresh eyes to see what's the best way for us to play. Nice part, these are guys that are versatile, that can do more than one job. And if I didn't feel that way, I would say absolutely yes. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. I've got a lot of faith in them in those spots. But adding value and the ability to move them if you needed to, that's a big part of our game. And I have a lot of trust in them and a number of guys in this class that when called upon they know the power of versatility. We talk about it a lot, and not just for those two, but for others as well.
I think the most interesting thing that stands out to me is there's not a definitive, like, Brandon Coleman is our left tackle, which I realize, like, Dan does the best he can there to try not to start a story, right? He's like, I have faith in those guys, and, like, he should. They played well enough last year. No, you cannot say otherwise. That they did not play well enough. They couldn't get to the NFC Championship game with those guys playing those two spots. Now, if you upgrade, could they get farther? And is it more likely that they repeat that performance? Absolutely. I'm not saying those two were necessarily like all pros. I think Mikey obviously had a better season playing outside corner than Coleman did at left tackle. And I think Coleman, towards the end of the season, was kind of rough in some spots. But also, I know he was dealing with a pretty banged up shoulder. And when you're a guy that's big and strong and has to block other big, strong men, not having your full shoulder is not ideal. So I think that the fact that they are keeping the fresh eyes on it, the fact that Mikey, who knows, like if they let's say the best guy available to them at 29 is a guy they absolutely love at nickel corner. Would they keep Mikey outside and draft that guy and be like, Mikey, you're playing outside opposite of Marshawn and roll? They could. They could. If they love a left tackle, let's say Simmons from Ohio State falls and they're more comfortable with his knee injury than others are, yeah, they could take him and start him at left tackle and have Coleman kick inside or Coleman go to right tackle. But the fact that they were that DQ was non-committal, I think is interesting, worth watching. He shouldn't be committal if he's not ready to commit. That's not me saying that he's controversy. Like, good. You're always looking to compete. That's how they built the program, and so I thought that was a good pick, Anthony. Good pick.
Thank you, sir.
And in a way, it goes with the question that I asked him in the side scrum later. We'll see. We might pull this bite as well. But I asked Dan. I was like, after the season, you guys were still like obviously pretty upset by the way it ended. But in so many ways, you're mentally still in that, like, we have to be, what could we have done in 2024? Now that your focus is on building 2025, like, do you go back and look at that with a different lens? And he's like, yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of appreciation for what we did. And some of that is that too, right? Like, he would never have said, Brandon Coleman's not our future left tackle during the season. He'd been like, Brandon's our starter. We're really happy with him, whatever. Like, he would not have left the door open for fresh eyes in the way that he did now, because now he's in team building mode. And so the mindset is just different this time of year, and that's good. You have to be able to make that switch. Otherwise, you can't maximize either the offseason or the in-season. When we get back, Rhett Lewis, NFL Network, joins us on set here in Indianapolis. Then Ben Standig coming up at 5. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. We are scheduled here to have Rhett Lewis. Is Rhett coming over? Not right now. All right. We'll reschedule with Rhett here shortly. But we are live here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Just having PR people come over and let us know stuff that's happening live. So we will have Marc Ross later on in the show. I know that for sure because despite the zoo that is this absolute chaos of Combine Week and people needing to reschedule because this happened and that happened, Mark and I talked earlier today, so we're going to hit play on that interview. It's really good, and that's happening at 5:30. Ben Standig is sitting idly over there. He and Mitch Tischler are having a chat across the way. He will be here at 5. But what that gives us an opportunity to do is play for you more of what Dan Quinn said today. So we will do that right now. And I thought this question from Sam Fortier was really good. And this will be bite 5 from the big presser, Anthony. The criteria that Dan Quinn is looking for in a commander. I think most people know, but as we re-enter scouting season here, to be very clear, there is one thing that rises above everything else when it comes to making a commander. Here's DQ.
It's probably bigger than like this specific thing, but what at the very front of the line, man, are we looking for like the competitive spirit in a player and guys who just absolutely love ball. They're willing to show that connection to their teammates, and some of that shows up in meetings like it does here about leadership, about tell me some examples. The tape and that part of the evaluation, that's clear, but we also want to go full circle and make sure it's so important the people that we bring in to this crew are going to be part of an outstanding group, and we want to make sure every single thought we can do to add to that, we will. And so that's much clearer to be able to see that on full display going into this year.
So DQ talking about how the competitiveness, which, again, not surprising if you've been paying attention. He talks about it every week. I also love, Anthony, can you just replay until I say that's good at the start of this? Can you replay that bite for me real quick?
It's probably bigger than like this specific thing, but what at the very front of the line, man, are we looking for like the competitive spirit?
You stop right there. He wants to say dog-ass competitor so bad. That's his favorite phrase in the whole world. He wants to say dog-ass competitor so bad, and he stops himself because he's on a big, giant podium at the NFL Combine, and he tried not to cuss as much, even though he still said stuff later on. But, like, the dog-ass competitor is what he wants. He and what Adam wants. Like, he/they want that tremendously high character, will do what it takes on and off the field. And what I appreciate about Dan there and why I like that bite so much is because he doesn't talk about just like what Marshawn Lattimore brings, right? Like what Marshawn brings in terms of competitiveness of like he will literally fight you. Okay, I don't think that needs a whole lot of explanation. But will you do what it takes off the field to say, I will give us a competitive advantage by how I treat and interact and bond with my teammates? Like there is a next level to the thoughtfulness here that is big time, and I really appreciate DQ stepping out and defining that in an even more critical way, or an even more verbose, descript way like he did today. He was asked this question as well. This will be bite 7, and actually, sorry. Can we let's go to bite 10 instead? And just double clicking on that competitiveness and then how it is also defined through not just what you do on the field, but the team chemistry and the bond that these guys had. He was asked about how that grew as the season went on.
Buy-in's not a term that I use that often, honestly. I just want to talk about, like, this is how we're going to do things moving forward. I knew it wouldn't be for everybody, Nikki, in that way, but I also knew I was looking for connection between one another, how hard they would play for one another, how they would communicate together. And so those things I saw improving. I knew if we were going to be a good team, we would play a lot better at the end than we would at the start. We were going to work hard at our skills. We were going to work hard at that. But you also needed some proof. You know, to have belief is one thing, but it is results. And so I would say it got stronger of winning close games. So I would say, Nikki, the second half is probably where belief turns into or maybe I should say hope turns into belief. And somewhere in the November, December, hope transferred into that. Now, hope is good. You want that. But the belief is we're going to make this play. We're going to convert the fourth down. We're going to get the stop. We're going to win on this drive. That's when I saw that belief take place.
At the very beginning of that bite, I think the hope belief stuff is good, and I think he's right? Like, we can all hope that something's going to happen, but there was a point for all of us during the season where you just started to believe. I'm not telling tales out of school here, but I was talking with Matthew Berry. Mitch and I were talking to him after DQ spoke today, and he talked about this sensation that he had watching games this year as a fan. Of course, Matthew from NBC, and you watch him on Sunday Night Football and does all the fantasy stuff, and is a huge Commander super fan. He's like, there just got to a point where I used to always think, how are we going to blow it? How are the Commanders going to lose this game? And this year it was like, I don't know. It's not the way I would go about it, but they're going to win this game. They're going to figure it out. And I think we all had that, right? When hope turned into belief and belief turned into whatever is above belief. Like, it felt undeniable in a way. But at the beginning of that, Nikki asked that question about when did you feel like guys started to buy in to what you were doing? And he said, buy-in's not a term that I use a whole lot. And that really struck me. I live standing there 3 feet from Nikki and 10 feet from Dan, if that, was like, I'm missing what he's saying right now because I'm stuck thinking about that idea that someone who talks so much about belief, someone that talks so much about bringing a group together doesn't talk about buy-in. But I think with that, there's an inherent that if you're getting buy-in, it feels like you're selling something. And there's a difference between selling something and being something. And I think that is part of the magic of what they built was it's not just that you convinced guys. I think that's it, right? That's the difference. It's not convincing guys to go, this is how we do it, to use dance around. This is how we get down. This is how we're going to do business, whatever. It's getting guys who already believe in it, or saying, this is the way we're going to do it, take it or leave it. And if you wind up leaving it, we'll let you leave. We're not going to say, oh, you're a horrible human, and, we're not going to badmouth you on the way out. But, if you don't want to go about your business this way, that's fine. Go try what you want to do somewhere else. And Jahan Dotson got sent away for that in some form or fashion. Emmanuel Forbes did not make the cut by midway through the season. I think that is to a lesser extent, part of what, on top of the money, obviously, what is happening with John Allen, where, I don't know that they see eye to eye all the time on how to do all the things, and it's fine for a fresh start for him. There's no ill will. There's no hard feelings. John played really well when he came back. He deserves credit for that. But, it's time to go. It's time to move on. This party, particularly, is over for him. And so I appreciate that from DQ and outlining that because that also influences what happens next. Would a guy in free agency like DJ Reed make a lot of sense for Washington, theoretically, the corner from the Jets? Yeah, they need another corner. And the physical, intense style that they play here is very similar to what Robert Saleh played in New York. And I'll leave it to other evaluators who have watched more of Reed to say that he's a scheme fit or not. But from what I've read, I do think he's a name that's worth watching to spend money on potentially, right? I don't think that they will. He's not going to wind up on anybody's top Commanders list because I think the price will probably be too rich to spend at that position when they're already paying Lattimore a decent chunk of change and they have so many other holes. But just to say, let's say that he's a guy that they target. They want to bring that guy in because he matches what they are. Not bring him in and convince him to do what they do. They're going to target, especially guys they spend money on, to be, these are guys that fit, we know who they are, or we're pretty sure that they are who we are, and that way there's no friction. Like, we can just keep moving in the direction that we're moving as fast as humanly possible. So I just think that's good. 2 really good bites that also play on something that I've asked everyone that's come through here in Indianapolis and sat down with us at the NFL Combine. I've asked everybody, like, what's something that you learn from watching Washington's success this year? And, you know, a lot of those answers have been some version of the character, the competitiveness, and the fit, and different versions of that on and off the field. And so makes a lot of sense that those are the things that Dan's thinking about as we sit here in Indy. All right, when we get back, more from Quinn, or we'll see. I'm going to try to see what's up with Rhett and see if we can reschedule with Rhett Lewis of NFL Network. But Ben Standig coming up live at 5. It's the Hoffman Show here on the team at 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, and Rhett Lewis is now joining us, NFL Network, Path to the Draft.
Let's go.
And
That's
yeah,
we're on the journey, man.
We are, dude. We are here.
Yeah.
There is nothing that screams like, hey, bro, we're getting into draft season, quite like being in this Hall J of Radio Row in the Convention Center.
It just feels, you can feel the energy in the air, right? You know?
I don't know if that's energy, Red. I think that's actual literal staleness of recycled air.
It might be.
At least it rained today. I was like, oh, some nice humidity. Go step outside for lunch.
Yeah, but look, this is a marquee tentpole event on the path to the draft, and it's a great opportunity to understand more about the NFL community that makes these decisions, and obviously the players that are going to hear their name called, in April in Green Bay, which is ultimately what we're trying to get to.
For sure. So since you just mentioned the way that the decision makers go, I'll start with the question that I'm asking literally everyone who sits in that chair this week, which is when you watch the Commanders' success last year, and it was so unpredictable and so unprecedented in many ways, is there something you learned about how a team can find success in the NFL or about team building that you go wow, I really feel like I learned that from Washington?
Well, they get the quarterback right. So
that is certainly a valid answer.
That is probably the easiest answer, and truthfully, I mean, it's probably the most impactful answer. Now, the other part of it is they got the head coach right, and when you start rattling off all right, we got to have a top-notch talent evaluator. Nailed that one with Adam Peters. We got to have a culture-building leader as a head coach in Dan Quinn. Nailed that one. Guys, that want to rally around and be better for him and for the team, nailed that. And then we got to get a quarterback that carries the message of both of those two leaders in that power structure in this organization and filter it down throughout the rest of the team. Nailed it. Okay, yeah, sure. Can we get better on the offensive line? Absolutely. Can we find more ways to rush the passer? Absolutely.
Right.
And so, but those three things, I mean, that's the triangle offense for Phil Jackson. That's it, man. That's the whole thing.
Tirico came on our show in the middle of the season and was like, the four things you need are those three plus ownership.
Oh, sure. And ownership,
they also got the ownership piece right, which most teams don't ever have the chance to change.
That's right.
Washington
That's a good point.
Went from let's call it not great to real good. F to A in the NFLPA survey.
That's right.
When you look at that's, by the way, another weird thing. I'm sure all the coaches love the
that
fact
it comes
that
out
comes
this
out
week
today. Hey, you're all going to be at the podium. Let's ask you about it. When you look at this draft for Washington and you look at their team needs, is there something that really stands out to you that you're like, oh, I like the fit of how this draft class fits with the Commanders at the 29th overall pick?
Yeah, so the way that I have it, I think edge, I think tackle, I think additional wide receiver, understanding that a lot of the kind of ancillary pieces there outside of Terry McLaurin are either free agents or are or not coming back.
Him and Luke are the only two guys that are real NFL receivers on the roster
that are back. Yeah. So this is not a great in terms of historically comparing receiver classes. This is not up there in the way it has been in recent years, but obviously. Let's see, picking at 29, I think you're still going to get a fantastic defensive lineman there.
Yeah.
Is a Walter Nolan from Ole Miss available there? With Jonathan Allen potentially on his way out, right? Is there a Donovan Ezeraku as an edge rusher from BC, who is a half sack away from the FBS lead this year, right behind Mike Green, who's probably going to go 10 spots ahead of where the Commanders are picking, if not more. So I think they're going to have an opportunity to get a badass type of player on one side of the ball that not only fits a need but fills the value portion, and you're nailing the strength of this draft on that front.
Rhett Lewis, NFL Network, Path to the Draft with us. You can of course watch Path to the Draft. What time are you guys nightly at this point?
So we begin the debut of Path to the Draft is the last Monday in March. I believe that's the 31st, and we'll start at 6 Eastern time. But we are on an hour before all the combine drills begin this weekend.
Nice.
So
nice.
Kind of providing a primer.
Check that out on NFL Network. Speaking of the combine actual drills,
yes.
Is there a guy that you can't wait to watch test? Either because you're like, that dude's going to be a freak and I can't wait to watch the show,
right.
Or because you're like, I want to see if that guy can run the way I think he can, and if he can, that's going to help his draft stock half a round or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I think it's intriguing on both fronts, right? And I think Jalen Walker from Georgia, not sure if he's actually going to do anything. I don't know if they've said anything official, but there's certainly buzz that he's not going to compete in some of those athletic testing drills here. That would be unfortunate. I think he would blow it up. I think when I look at a player like Will Johnson, he fits on the other side of the scheme, where I think the cornerbacks actually have some real value in these drills, maybe more so than other position groups. You do want to see long speed from that group, and we didn't see a lot of Will Johnson this year at Michigan. Now, he could be, outside of Travis Hunter, the next corner off the board, if that's how you're characterizing Travis Hunter. But he's got potential to be like CB1 type of player in this class, and I think people really want to see, like, all right, how's he feeling? What's his recovery look like? What's he been doing? How fast is he really? Because he had tremendous 23 tape, and then we just didn't see a lot of him in 24. So I think he's a player that fits like the intrigue. Like, oh, well, I'm really kind of curious.
When you talk about the 23-24 thing, I was just talking about this with Lance Zierlein in an interview that folks will hear later in the week. But like, how do you try to make sense of some of these guys? There's a bunch of them in this draft that, like, the 23 tape is good.
Yes.
And then the 24 tape, for one reason or another, is not as good. Sometimes it's situation.
Yeah.
I tried to throw Luther Burden at Lance, and he's like, you want to know why it's bad? Because the quarterback was bad in 24. I was like, okay, well, you got that.
But that's a real thing.
Right, for sure. So you got that. You have injuries. You have, some guys are just not a lot of 24 tape, period, because of the injuries. How do you try to suss that out as you put together a board and try to really talk to evaluators about how they're trying to make sense of that?
So that's where the scouts come into play. That's where you trust your scouting staff to have done, the research and been in the school, at practice, and have talked to coaches and have done the background on the player and have understood it from all different sides. And you can put that in the report. You guys can sit around the table when you're making, having these meetings, these draft meetings, and you can actually do that and have that conversation. So I think it comes down to, again, doing your homework. Call the coaching staff. You're talking to the player. You're talking to his trainer. You're kind of getting all the information, and then you can put together the puzzle for yourself and decide whether you're comfortable with it or not. Burden is certainly one that had higher expectations. He was certainly higher on my list coming into this season than he is at this point. I had him kind of vying for like wide receiver 5 to me at this point. There's a few guys that I like a little better in that group. I mean, obviously, Tet McMillan, Emeka Buka, Matthew Golden. I really like Trey Harris from Ole Miss.
Golden's the guy that I'm intrigued by because when we're talking about the guys that can test well, he goes out and runs like 4.3s, especially like 4.35 or below. Then
with great hands,
he's gonna go. He's gonna all of a sudden find himself in the teens.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a first-round pick. I think Obuka is an absolute stone-cold professional. Like, a team's gonna absolutely love him. He's gone in the first round. Then I don't know. Like, I don't know where that goes beyond that. So. But yeah, that Burden's a good one. I'm trying to think of some other guys that kind of, Will Johnson, as I mentioned, certainly fit that bill.
Simmons, Ohio State, because of the injury, and that's
exactly
probably more of an injury thing than a lack of 24.
But that's
thing.
a part of it too, and that's why the combine's so valuable. You're gonna know what's up with this player by the time you leave Indianapolis.
That's for sure. All right, I will wrap with this question for Rhett Lewis of the NFL Network. The question that I'm asking all the draft-specific guys this week: who's your guy? The guy that if you get to sit down and watch tape of anybody, where you're just like, I've already watched this tape, but I just want to watch more of it. Not I need to round out. Oh God, I got to watch another DB.
Yeah.
Like who's the guy that's your guy in this draft?
Woody Marks from USC.
Okay, that's a name I haven't heard yet. Tell me more about Woody Marks.
Okay, so Woody Marks began his career at Mississippi State. He is he went to Mississippi State when Joe Moorhead was the head coach, thinking he was going to be a bell cow running back. Mike Leach ends up coming in and like, holy smokes, like now I'm in an air raid offense. Sticks it out with Mike Leach. He is a tough dude. The mischaracterization about people that played for Mike Leach is that they're not tough. It's like air raid. It's all fluff.
You're preaching in the choir.
Okay.
The team with Cliff Kingsbury is the OC, right?
Right. But you couldn't play for Mike Leach if you were not a tough son of a gun. And that dude played with like a broken nose against Alabama. Like, Woody Marks stayed in that system, caught a ton of balls. I think set the NCAA record for most catches by a running back in consecutive games. It was like up over 45 at one point. He has more career catches out of the backfield as a running back than every receiver that went to the Senior Bowl outside of Tez Johnson.
Wow.
So
That's
if you're into
crazy.
that sort of thing, and he will run between the tackles. He was USC's best offensive player this year.
I love that. That is now a guy that I want to go watch because especially
There you
if he's
go.
got experience
Yeah.
with the air raid and
Yes.
maybe some of the stuff that Cliff's running. It might
No doubt.
feel a little familiar.
Yeah.
And you're running back, so there you go. Rhett Lewis passed to the draft again. They're on before the combine drills this
Yes.
weekend, and then starting in late March, 6 o'clock nightly on NFL Network. Ben Standig joins us live on set here in Indianapolis next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980, where you see the Athletics' Ben Standig. We could play the fancy Not My Beat imager, Ben, but then you just have to be sitting here longer, not being able to hear it because you're not wearing headphones, and so we're gonna get right into it if that's good with you.
I got here Sunday. I'm not trying to act like I'm like exhausted, like I've been running marathons, but I was basically too lazy to put the headphones on. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
That is Indianapolis
they
on
are
Wednesday.
like right here. We give my Iron Star chat. It's like right there. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. I'm gonna veer. We'll get to the things that Dan Quinn said and all that stuff in a second. But we're inside baseball combine talk for a second. I feel like next year, I want to come later in the week because I know it gets emptier from like this part of it, the media part of it, because all of the GM and head coach pressures are pushed earlier in the week. But the workouts don't even start until after most of the media leaves, and this year that includes me. My flight takes off 90 minutes after the first workout begins. Like, I actually want to stay and see some of that stuff and do that. Like, what? I guess really, Ben, if I'm going to ask you a question about this, why the hell do they do this way? What are we all doing? A question that many people in NFL media have asked themselves in Indianapolis.
Well, the funny thing is, and I wrote about this a little bit earlier in the week about like what am I watching for at the combine, and honestly, most of the story was about the veteran market.
Right.
It wasn't really about this. Now, of course, we're in a world where a year ago that would not have been the case. We were all about the quarterbacks, but this is kind of where free agency really kind of starts, or the trade market at least, right? And the draft. It's not that it is secondary, but the only thing that really I think matters for most of these teams is like the measurables. And, some of that does obviously factor in.
The medicals are huge.
The medicals and the talking, the interviews that they do. At least like for Dan Quinn, he doesn't know any of these guys for the most part, so they get that feeling. The on-field stuff. I mean, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just I think it matters less. And I think also that they want to build out the week. They want you on Saturday to be in front of your television watching. I guess none of them are working out, but they want you to be watching, in theory, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and the receivers doing that. So I think that's why they push it back. But you're right. It is a lot of people we know have already left or are leaving later today. So, yeah, it's odd in that regard that the actual thing we think we're here for is the backdrop to what's actually happening.
It's actually two events.
Yeah.
And there's like NFL... Like, I don't know, the NFL spring break is the Super Bowl because that's there and that's zany and there's a bunch of other yahoos wandering around. This is more for the nerds. So it's whatever you want to call this portion of like the media stuff. And then there's the actual NFL combine. But in many ways, the NFL, publicly at least, the NFL combine hasn't actually started yet.
Right. I mean, also like the agents are here. Like the Super Bowl, some of the league is there. Senior Bowl, some of the league is there. Here, more or less, somebody from all 32 teams is here. A couple teams have leave their bigger decision makers behind. But okay, almost everybody's here. The prospects are here. The agents are here. Some agents will be talking to all 32 teams about free agents and draft picks. So the business of football is happening all around us. We are not
That's
privy.
what we should call it. The first part of the week is the NFL Business Summit. And the second part of the week, there's a scouting combine.
Right.
There. So we can be careful, though. If the NFL gets word of that, they'll somehow monetize the NFL Business Summit. Hey, Roger, give me my cut. All right. As for the Business Summit, and that includes a press conference, if you JP is just interrupting in the middle of the show like I don't have tremendous ADD.
Somebody was like yelling like right over our heads. There's a lot going on here.
Welcome to the zoo. No respect for this radio show. Again, I don't know if you saw this. Our Audacity sign. No respect for the show. They didn't spell our company name right.
That's the product I use for my podcast. Like when I have to produce it, I use Audacity.
Yeah, we got to get you Adobe Audition. Upgrade to the.
Somebody wants to pay for it. I take the free. I get the free version off the internet.
Dan Quinn today. The biggest news that he makes, to the extent that this is news, is being non-committal, more so on Brandon Coleman than Mikey Sainristil, but both of them saying like we have fresh eyes. Sainristil, hey, he could play inside outside. Okay, well he did that last year. For him to say Coleman is not definitively like we're shutting it down, he's our left tackle, done. Is that surprising to you? Not surprising to you? Significant? Insignificant?
So in full context, when we talked about Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, I don't know that they gave much of a direct answer to anything. Adam Peters admitted that John Allen was granted a request for a trade because we already had, but that was already out there. Other than that, neither one of them really said anything very specific. But, I did ask both of them about Coleman because to me, we can talk about the offensive line all day we want, but who's playing where? You could tell me that they're going to have once Sam Cosmi's back, all 5 starters back in their positions, and I wouldn't be like, well, that's insane. But you want
doesn't seem like optimal, but not insane. They did make the NFC Championship game with that offensive line, and the quarterback was still a rookie. What happens when he's got a year of experience under his belt?
Right. I mean, and Wiley. Look, I mean, Wiley technically didn't give up a sack according to PFF, and like his money. If you want to go out and get a tackle, cool. It's going to be a lot of money on the free agent
$10
market.
million for a tackle is not that bad of a price.
Right. But what gets interesting is like if Coleman, some people thought pre-draft he was more of a guard. If you were to move him inside and say draft a tackle in my 10-point plan for the Commanders, I had them signing Alaric Jackson, the Rams left tackle the last couple of years. He's only 27, so it's still a younger guy. Now all of a sudden you'd have a couple of younger guys. You could draft one. But the point is, where is Coleman? There was some promise. I mean, he's obviously a huge dude. You see the athleticism. He also gave up 10 sacks. It felt like a lot of times last year when Jaden Daniels was getting pressured quickly, it seemed to be coming from the left side. And, okay, so Adam Peters said, hey, look, he did pretty good considering he was a rookie. It's a tough adjustment, and there's no argument
he
there.
Did, but it doesn't mean that you can't do better. It's like, really, what is he for 2025? So I guess the question then becomes, and I'm sure they're trying to answer this question. I'm curious like what your answer would be, is the determining factor of where Brandon Coleman plays Brandon Coleman or what else they can get, right? Because if they can find, let's say the kid Simmons from Ohio State falls in the draft, and
right.
but they're more comfortable with his knee than the other teams that let him fall, you draft him like you're drafting him to play left tackle. If you don't, like you're just drafting another Brandon Coleman type that might be a tackle, might be a guard, like how do you decide which one is where?
In my fantasy like baseball league, some guys have position eligibility at multiple spots, so I'll go through the draft or the auction and be like, okay, a second baseman, this guy's a good value, I'll get him, and I'll take this guy who can play second or short and move him to short. You can't exactly do that here. I mean, you can, but you can,
but like if you're just moving around the same exact pieces, it's like, I don't want to use the deck chairs on the Titanic, moving around, because this is not the Titanic going down, but like if we swap chairs, you and I are sitting in the same chair. These are the same exact model, and all we've done is change their places.
Right.
And if you're going to get a third-round guy or a second-round guy who is pretty athletic, might be able to play tackle, but might be better suited at guard, congrats. You've now got 2 Brandon Colemans, and I don't know at that point, is it worth – now, if you have 2 Brandon Colemans and one of them gets to play guard, like that could be cool, but like which one? And that's the thing I don't know exactly what the process is yet. I don't know if they know in terms of figuring that part out.
Right. Like I said, that's the part. Like, it's just we all get that offensive line could be better, needs to be better, and forget what they are. If you build up your offensive line, it makes everything behind you better, helps the quarterback, all that stuff. You can, and to me, that is always where I would rather spend my money in offense besides the quarterback. It's just a matter of, do they think that Coleman is legitimately going to develop into that kind of play? Like, the one thing I was thinking about is, let's just say they willingly move Coleman inside and think, you know what, he's got a better chance to be a Pro Bowl level player there. Okay, cool. I mentioned signing an Alaric Jackson. Obviously, a lot of teams would be interested in a younger tackle, but let's just say that would happen. If you drafted, you could still draft a tackle in the first round, right? That wouldn't be insane. And now all of a sudden, if you put Wiley, move him to guard while Sam Cosmi is out, that gives you a nice fill in there. And then when Cosmi comes back, you all of a sudden would have Jackson, this 27-year-old tackle who's had a good experience. Coleman at left guard. Biadasz, who was very good last year. Sam Cosmi, obviously good. And now you're just first-round tackle. I don't know if they'll be better because you have to see it. But on paper, you'd have 3 younger guys plus Biadasz and Cosmi. All of a sudden, I feel like the offensive line has improved significantly.
Right.
And there wasn't, the first-round pick is a good investment, and signing Jackson would be something. But, that to me is super interesting. Now, you could do the same thing, draft a guard instead of a tackle, and maybe keep Coleman at tackle. But that's my question. I don't know. Some people, like I was talking to Mitch Tischler, who's a big offensive line guy, he thinks, no, you leave Coleman there, stay with him, you buys that, and maybe that's accurate. But that's what I wonder. What do they think? Because that will dictate to me what they do with everything else.
The one thing I can probably safely say is one heck of a term, by the way. If they get another Coleman type in that he could play tackle or guard, the way they'll probably decide is they'll have them compete for it, because that's how they do. Like, and that's important, and that's the way it should go. Is like they probably won't, like they probably have ideas, but they're going to let it play out because that's just how they go about their business. Ben Standig, The Athletic, with us here on the Hoffman Show, live on Radio Row at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. If you had to bet a small amount of your own money on where they spend big money, or I would say the most money, where do you think that this $100 million post John Allen trade or cut goes this offseason?
So we're talking just external or things like Terry McLaurin
No,
extension?
I mean, if it's all internal / bringing guys back, that now all of a sudden Bobby costs a little more, Zach costs a little more, you extend Terry, and that's your biggest chunk, then I guess they'll try to go bargain bin shopping again. But, like, I was thinking less specific to guys, more specific to positions.
Gotcha. I mean, like, I think the defensive line has got to be where they go. Like I said, I'm not saying they shouldn't upgrade on the offensive line, but again, you could bring the same group back and be like, okay, like you said, Coleman gets better over the course of the year, James better, things like that. Defensive line right now, they're moving on from John Allen. Dorrance Armstrong was fine last year, but I think, look, he was more of a role player with Dallas, and sometimes less is more. It was some of these guys, you see that a lot in the NBA. Some guys are good for 15 minutes, not good for 30 minutes.
Right, you get exposed. It's too much.
And Armstrong was fine, but, like, you need something more across from him. They're letting Allen go. Cool. They have no backup tackles right now, right? You have Payne and Newton. That even if those two guys played 70% of the snaps, they're 60% then still there. So they still need that too. So between those two situations, it just feels like that to me is where they have to go. Because even if you bring back your Dante Fowlers, your Cleveland Farrells, that's not enough. So I just feels like the defensive line not only, and plus, look, they were 30th against the run.
Yes.
They did, Fowler and Luvu gave them some good pass rush, but it was overall somebody consistent. And Fowler, look, they got more at him you could have imagined, but I don't think he's a realistic two-way guy for them. He played less.
He can be a situational pass rusher, great.
Yeah.
But they need a one, and like that's the hard thing. And it's actually we should have this conversation because I heard you on with Robert Mays on the Athletic Football Show. Robert's doing a good series, or talking to beat reporters. Obviously, been part of their great network over the Athletic about the most interesting teams in the NFL, and the Commanders were on the list. And I feel like you are lower on, and this is fun radio fodder because Andrew Berry has shut it down. The Browns GM has said we are not trading Myles Garrett, but eventually they might trade Myles Garrett because Myles Garrett also seems like he is very serious about never wanting to play for the Cleveland Browns again. And eventually those two guys that are telling themselves and the world the truth right now, those two realities are going to eventually butt heads. So you seem like you are lower on the prospects of Garrett than certainly I am. So I don't misrepresent you, where are you at on their potential to bring in Myles Garrett or spend big money on someone like a Myles Garrett?
I mean, certainly they have enough pieces to make a trade work. They have multiple, first-round pick this year and for next year. That alone gets you in the door, I would think. My thing is, again, you've got 28 free agents. I know they made the Final Four last year, but even if you said they're going to bring back all 28 guys, I don't know that says to me they are ready to go to they're Myles Garrett away from being that next level. And I know you're like, well, people are like, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? They lost to Philly, and otherwise they got all the way. But a lot of things worked out for them last year. Winning 5 games in a row down the stretch on the final play from scrimmage is not normal, right? The schedules and get harder, all these things. So I think they do need more, but I don't know that I'm ready to say they are the one player away. Plus, in order to make that trade, you have to give away picks. We know Adam Peters logically wants to build through the draft. They have 7 picks this year, but only 3 in the top 145. 3 in the top 80, but 3 in the top 145. So if you trade away, let's say a first this year or next year, you only have really 2 premium picks as it stands to add the other things that you need. So you have to weigh that. And that's where I'm sort of like, I can see them going out and spending money and signing a free agent for good money, but trading picks and then having to give money to somebody, to me, it feels like they're a little bit further away than that.
So here's my counter argument to that. Finding the kind of guys they found last year is not easy.
Right.
But it's also a lot easier than finding a Myles Garrett.
Absolutely.
And they do, outside of Jaden, and if you want to put Terry in this class, fine. They don't have blue chip guys.
Right.
That is actually the difference between them and the Eagles, is the Eagles have blue chippers all over the freaking place. It's disgusting how well they've drafted. And part of that is they've taken, they missed on some guys? Sure, but they haven't really missed on their first-round picks and second-round picks in a couple of years. And they've made some smart trades down to make sure, and when they've traded up, like Cooper DeJean was obviously a big deal, and the Commanders on the other side of that trade and did fine on their end of it. But, like, they haven't missed at the top, and they've got enough picks late that they also hit a couple extra swings. For Washington, I don't know how they necessarily get those blue chip guys, because now you're stuck in the bottom of the round, and sure, maybe you can get it, but like when Philly got Jalen Carter, they were up 11, something like that. They had their one down year, and they made the most of it by getting Jalen Carter.
Right.
Some of these other guys they've gotten have been kind of more in the middle. Washington is probably going to be picking in the 20s for their foreseeable future. So how are you planning on getting the thing that you're missing? And to me, that's why Myles Garrett, even for 2 firsts, I'm in on that, especially if I think 1 first is going to be 29 and the 2nd first is hopefully going to be 32 next year, or at the very least 31.
Look, I can't argue against anything you said. He's obviously
I did it. I won the argument. But
well, I mean, I said, look, he's going to be better than anybody else you could get at that spot. It's a core position. You definitely need that. That was easily their biggest weakness. I mean, they weren't the only team to give up a bazillion yards to Saquon Barkley, but every single game he got them. And if Detroit hadn't stopped giving Jahmyr Gibbs the ball, the same thing was happening in that game. So they obviously need that. There's no argument. Like I said, it's just that's what's so weird about this situation. Under normal circumstances, we wouldn't even be debating this. They would be building through the draft again, but they went so much further.
And they might have I think they have the best quarterback in the conference.
I agree.
Which is also a game changer. And so I guess, like, in some ways the question then becomes, on this theological argument that we're having, football theology with Hoffman and Standig here on the Team 980. How different is Garrett minus 2 1s versus Josh Sweat at $23 million a year, or whatever he's going to cost? And like, that's the calculation you have to make. And if they think Josh Sweat can be a blue chip type of guy in their system, okay, well, maybe that's a different conversation. But I think the difference between Josh Sweat and Myles Garrett is pretty significant. And that's not to say Josh Sweat's not better than everything that they have right now. It's just Myles Garrett's Myles Garrett.
Right. Like I said, I think, like you mentioned, Philly, and I think that's the point of their whole season that it was discussed and yet overlooked at the same time. They nailed their draft year over year over year. And because of that, they constantly have guys on rookie deals, not just a quarterback, but a bunch of different guys. So they always have cheaper talent, and then you can go out and make those moves. They traded for A.J. Brown a couple years ago.
Which, by the way, if you can do something like that where it's a 1-for-1 swap, that is a huge key. The Eagles went 1-for-1, 1 draft pick, middle of the first round for A.J. Brown. If you can trade 29 for a guy that's A.J. Brown caliber, obviously, you do that in a heartbeat.
Right. But so, like, if you made the trade for Myles Garrett and you give up first this year or next year, again, they've only had the 1 draft. This year, you only have the 2nd and the 3rd. Then it's, most of the picks are later in round 1. So as it stands, you're not going to build up that pipeline. It's unfortunate for this group, as we know, that draft picks between Daron Payne and Jaden Daniels are gone. So they don't have any of that to work with. And I just think that's such a that puts you back in a way. So it just feels like, to me, they've got to get at least another draft under their belt to collectively have more of these younger pieces. They're going to be part of this core group. Also, the cheaper contracts. I think, to me, that's more important. And the NFL is getting weird right now. How many guys have requested trades?
A ton.
And it feels like this could be a trend that starts to continue.
Well, I think the trade market is going to be more, and we're guys that have watched the NBA and how wild that trade market has been, and it takes a while to find itself. And so there's a chance to, because one team's trash might be another team's treasure. And so if you have the right scheme fit, you have the right medical staff, you have the right stuff, then you can take someone who isn't working, or just sometimes it's just timeline. Like, oh, crap, we need cap relief, and we're not going to be good for 2 years. Here's this guy that's pretty good, but the way we structured his contract and where he is in it saves us a bunch of cap money. You're good right now, and take him. And whether that's a Deebo Samuel or a Cooper Kupp, or obviously those 2 teams are hoping to be good right away, but like with where they are cap-wise, that could work for the Commanders. And I think the other thing that's like important to explain when we talk about these trades, that you certainly understand as someone who does a lot with the contracts and talks to agents and stuff, is when you're the team receiving a player in a trade, it's always cheaper for you because the prorated signing bonus money, that's the dead cap that's being left behind, is never your responsibility. And so by nature, you're getting the player at a discount, even if you keep them on the current deal. And I think that is, like, in a way, the market inefficiency that is never going to be able to get fixed in the NFL, and why trades are probably, and trades for veterans, and especially for a team like Washington that has a rookie quarterback contract and thus an extra $60 million a year of market value to play with, based off what Jaden should be making and what he is, like, I think it's probably a good way to build a team.
I think that's the part that's the most compelling, is you basically have a 2-year window before Jaden is eligible for an extension. And does that compel you to do more? I think, to me, that's the part that would get me to think, okay.
Well, especially if I can sign guys to 2-year deals with not a lot of guaranteed money in year 3.
Right, yeah, right. No, for sure. But, like I said, if you make the Myles Garrett move, it helps you tremendously on the line and the defense as a whole. You give up that first-round pick, and now maybe there's enough move, again, if you're going to give Terry an extension, which I think is going to happen, then, you're probably doing a little bit less in free agency versus if they kind of do what they did last year in terms of signing like a Luvu, a Biotish, so on, but sign more of them, sign better players. Then now you're spreading.
Josh Sweats of the world, that caliber.
Yeah, I mean, like if Cooper Kupp becomes a free agent, or there's other receivers in that range, and that's the thing. Like they, as it stands, they need everything other than the quarterback, and that's the part that's so tricky. If they had more guys, if they hadn't just last year signed everybody to a 1-year contract, which was smart to do for that scenario, then we'd have a better feel for who they are and what they are. We don't know who's coming back. They don't have final say. I mean, a lot of these guys aren't going to have like major markets, but we don't know who is coming back or who's not. Does Bobby Wagner want to go out and live back on the West Coast? I don't know. Who are they getting? They have. So if Myles Garrett's cool. Still have questions on the offensive line. We don't know who the receivers are beyond Terry. Is Zach Ertz really going to give you that again?
But my counter argument to that would simply be, if you sign Josh Sweat, all those things are still true. Now,
but you don't give up the picks, though.
Right, but you're in the next 2 years, how much are those picks at the end of the first round going to help you? Like, Jaden broke our brains. Rookies aren't good. They're not supposed to be good.
Well, the only thing is, like, in the NBA, if we said the 29th pick, we'd be like, all right, whatever. Who knows? The NFL, you're talking about a starter at one of many positions.
Sure.
Even that's the thing with NFL. In day 3, people tend to look down on them. Where do you think? Forget the special teams guys. Like, where do you think the left guard comes from? Where do you think the library? So, like, all these guys, all those spots will help you. So that, again, like, that's the part. And this goes back to the Brandon Coleman thing. If they look at that guy and say, dude, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then that can start to change the calculus. Now you feel like you've already got a core piece there. Now going to get a Myles Garrett might be a little bit different. But if you're uncertain what you exactly have beyond Jaden and a couple other guys, then I don't know if you're one player away.
For sure. And, well, here's the last thing I'll say to kind of wrap up this conversation is then what it does is it takes away your margin for error. If you trade 2 1s or whatever for Myles, or you even trade, let's say just for the sake of this conversation, you traded your first 2 picks this year for Myles Garrett. Now you're down to 5. If you nail 4 of the 5, then it doesn't matter. It's just that's not how the draft works. The draft, typically, you want the most swings possible, and what you do is you shrink down your margin of error. Now, you can make that up by trading back in other rounds, et cetera, but that's a much higher tightrope to walk.
And just to go on that, this is where Adam Peters is really interesting. Where he really made his reputation in San Francisco was day 3 guys.
Right.
One guy's a free agent, Hufanga, the safety.
Yep.
To me, look, if Jeremy Chin were to move on, would be somebody to look at. That's where Adam Peters really got value for the 49ers. If that starts to happen, at the moment, it didn't quite happen this year yet. We'll see how some guys like Jordan McGee develop. Then all of a sudden it goes to a whole other level. But
right.
But you can't. I'm not going to assume that a 5th-round pick is going to turn into an All-Pro the way Hufanga did.
Right, and Adam we trust, but within reason. The man is human. Ben Standig, you can read his work in The Athletic. You can also check out the Last Man Standing podcast. Ben, appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
When we get back, Marc Ross, NFL Network, former NFL executive, joins us here on Radio Row.
why not us? We got the best quarterback in the NFC. We got a good coach. We got all of this, and so their timeline and the way they're building this is sort of changed a little bit. Where, all right, can we be a little bit more aggressive? Should we be a little bit more aggressive? And that's what they're talking about all season.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube, too, at the Team 980, where you see Marc Ross, former New York Giants executive. He's been with the NFL Network long enough that Washington fans don't have to be mad.
Yeah, well.
And you've been great on the show before.
I was Eagles, too, so, yeah.
In that case, sorry, it was great to have you, and good to see you.
And we used to beat up on y'all, too, the Giants and the Eagles, so sorry about
that. But it is a new day.
New day, new era, and I'm not with this team, so I'm rooting for y'all, too. So you got the best quarterback.
That is for sure, and that's something I remember talking to you about before the draft last year, and it's been great having you on the show, and you keep saying nice things about Washington, then they do great things, and now people in Washington can love you. So I want to actually start with the question that I'm asking everybody that comes through, because I think you're the only guy that's actually been in the team building process that I think I'm going to be able to talk to this week. So is there something, the way that Washington built what they built last year, that changed the way you think about the NFL or team building? See, and maybe for someone who's thought about it as much as you, it's clarifying more than changing. But is there something that either changed or clarified about team building and success in the NFL based off Washington?
I don't think they changed. I just think they got with what everybody else, the successful teams was doing, and that's some sort of stability and competency in the key decision-making positions of, okay, our GM, Adam Peters, this is not a question mark here. He's been established. Our head coach here, Dan Quinn. Okay, is he the superstar? I don't know, but he's been established. He's won a lot of games with the Falcons. So you put those two pillars in place, and then it seemed as if they had a good plan of, let's just put this solid, consistent foundation here with the offseason signings. Oh, okay, now let's just go draft the best quarterback in the NFC with the second pick in the draft. That helps out a lot. So when you're three pillars, you crush those, you're off to a good start.
Yeah, and not to mention ownership, if you want to add that one in too. Like, that's the one who puts them all in place.
I'll leave y'all the Washingtonians to crush Snyder. But yes, that helps as well. That helps.
I'm just saying, if you think of the four main pillars of a successful organization.
I think that Schneider regime had everybody in Washington, so I got plenty of family and friends in Washington, man, and just to get that cloud out of there the first year, and then okay, now you bring in the fresh ownership group. Certainly that helps.
So the thing that I feel like for me answers that question, and I'm curious to then run this by you as someone who's done it, is the competitive character part of the evals and how they built the team. And it's like, you can get I'll use Madden ratings as a way to make this universal, right? There's a bunch of different players in the NFL that have a 77 Madden rating, right? That's actually not that hard to find.
Yeah.
But how do you get there? Is it because you are a 77 every single week? Or are you a guy that plays like an 88 one week and a 65 the next? The consistency of the competitive character that they had and the types of guys that they targeted, I think, was clarifying in a lot of ways that everyone was moving in the same direction.
Yeah, I think when I watch and evaluate players, you shouldn't have to look for them. So let's just say I'm this receiver, let's say a linebacker, and I'm like, okay, he's not involved in the action. He's like, when you're watching film and someone's always showing up, that's competitiveness. That's production, as opposed to, well, he's 6'5" and 300 pounds, and he may do this, he could do this, and he's up and down, and he shows flashes. Those are the ones that continue to sort of flash. Whereas those guys that are always at it, the competitiveness that you can easily see when you watch them. You watch Terry McLaurin, you don't have to guess where he is or what he's doing. He's giving it his all. You see that. Jaden Daniels, you see it in them. Those are the players that they brought in year one. Even the vets that they brought in, the Austin Ecklers of the world.
Right.
He may be tapped out, but this guy's bringing it. So that's how they built it, and will continue to build. Now, the best mix is super talented guys that are
of course
super competitive. But where's the blend? Where's the formula of, okay, a little bit less talent, but the competitiveness, or a bunch of talent, the competitiveness? That's really what you're trying to achieve, that ultimate mix there.
Marc Ross, NFL Network, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, well, let me ask you a dumb question then. why didn't everybody get it right all the time? Like, what is the hard part about executing that? Because it sounds so simple, and I think that's why sometimes like people on my side of the business get it wrong.
Yep.
And then I think sometimes people on that like have been there will criticize. Like, oh, what does that guy know? And it's like then they get on TV and they say the same exact things that we've all been saying.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, so the idea is not bad; it's the execution of it. Why is it so hard to execute?
Because there's so many variables, there's so many factors that go into one player, whether it's his own qualities, whether it's injuries, whether it's scheme, whether it's fit with that team, whether it's the coaching that comes with the player that gets there, mentally if they're prepared and ready, mature enough. And not all players are made to make it. And that's I think right now, all 300 of these guys at the Combine are going to be Pro Bowl players. You know, that's the way we talk about these players. But no, the reality is there's going to be 10, and there's going to be 200 that don't make the NFL and aren't very good. So I think the expectations that they are going to make it is just not realistic, because just like anything or any good profession in life that you do, there's going to be an upper echelon of talent, a good group, a lot of middle class, and then a ton of people that don't make it. And I think, unfortunately, that doesn't get applied to the NFL or sports, where at this time of year, all these guys are Pro Bowl players, and when they're not, like, they're a bust. They don't know what they're doing. But the intrinsic nature of scouting is find the gems and fill in the gaps there, and it makes the team.
Which is also the alternate answer to that first question I asked you is like, I don't know, just be good at your job. Like, how do you be good? Be good at your job, because, like, oh, you can't possibly take a running back and a middle linebacker in the middle of the first round and then take a tight end. Well, like, unless it's Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, and Sam Laporta.
It all changes, right? And that's the thing. Like, everything is not set. Like, you have to do it this certain way. You have to adjust, but depending on what team you are and who you have on your team and the players and where you're going, the quarterback you have there, all 32 teams are completely different in what they are and where they're trying to get. Of course, they're trying to win the Super Bowl, but they're all at different places, so you all can't do it the same. And every year, whoever wins the Super Bowl, how do we do it like them? Well, they're all different, and it changes. And for this year, I've been saying it over and over. You want to be like the Eagles? Just hit on all your draft picks the past 4 years.
Right.
Just do that, and you're fine.
Yeah, 100%.
And it was the same with the Patriots. How do we be like, go get Tom Brady, go get the greatest quarterback
and then
of all
have him
time
play at
and
a
do
discount for 20 years. And
you'll
that
be
gives
fine.
you a lot of wiggle room. And I will say, like, the Eagles thing, hit on all of them, but also trade back a bunch. Make sure that you have, if you do miss, that you have extra picks. Which actually brings me to my next question. As we're talking to Marc Ross, former NFL executive with the Giants and the Eagles. We'll just say that part quickly and move on. And of course, now with the NFL Network here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. The Myles Garrett situation, you know, it's not going to be anything that happens quickly, especially as definitive as Andrew Berry was behind us at the podium yesterday. But conceptually, the idea that the Commanders can make a big move, and people are like, oh, you can't do that, can't go all in. It's like, well, there are other ways to you know, get more picks by trading back. Okay, you trade a couple away a couple picks, you trade back, now you get the right number later, but if you're good at your job and you nail the picks, then it can work out. But for Washington, if you're in that front office and, you know, Adam Peters is going around the room soliciting opinions, what are you saying about the idea of giving up, let's say, 2 firsts for Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I think 2 firsts wouldn't be bad, but though, as you mentioned about Andrew Berry and how definitive he was, he's just, unless it's something unbelievable, he's not going to move off of it. So this is, of course, fun to talk to about Myles Garrett because it is Myles Garrett, but realistically, and what Andrew Berry's saying, some other GMs I would not believe, but him, I know Andrew, like, he's being honest about this thing. Like, he's not letting this guy go. So I think it'll be fun to talk about until something does or does not happen with Myles, but realistically, I don't think it'll happen.
So conceptually for Washington, if you are, there's not another guy that's, you know, going to be the cost of Myles, obviously. But if you think about making trades and giving up draft capital, is that something that, based off where they are, they have to re-sign a ton of free agents, but they were in the NFC Championship game last year. So how are you thinking about that?
So their timeline got accelerated so fast, whereas last year it seemed as if, okay, fun team, rookie quarterback,
see if they're any
be
good,
competitive, see what's going on. Now it's we can beat the Eagles, you know. So it's
only team that did after Week 5, by the way.
That is true. We won't mention Jalen Hurts got hurt, but that's okay. but no, they beat them and they went toe to toe. So they should be looking at it as, why not us? We got the best quarterback in the NFC. We got a good coach. We got all of this, and so their timeline and the way they're building is sort of changed a little bit where, all right, can we be a little bit more aggressive? Should we be a little bit more aggressive? And that's what they're talking about all this all season. Now, you don't want to go crazy. You don't want to overvalue and be desperate, but you can be a little bit more aggressive, and we have a chance at this thing.
So my theory of the case with this roster is going back to the Madden ratings, right? Like they've been really good at finding the 78 guys.
Yeah,
like, hey, how do we get in? Maybe even we coach them up, put them in a different scheme, and they're at 82 by the middle of the season. Like, oh,
right.
we got a deal. Getting the 95 guys hard. Getting the 99 club guys. That's what's hard. And that's why, like, I'm like, yeah, I would do whatever it takes for Miles. I'm not going to go break Andrew Berry's spirit down if he's this defiant about it. But like that, getting those kinds of guys costs money and or draft capital.
Yeah.
So do you feel like Washington's at a place in their timeline where that is something that they should be pursuing?
Yeah, it's always that fine line of, all right, how much do we want to give up to get? And as you said, great players usually it's either super high draft picks or you pay a ton of money for them in free agency. And
right.
Washington,
or you got to draft them, but they're not 99s immediately.
Yeah, or you
Unless
strike
it's
gold.
Jaden.
You strike gold, with somebody, but Terry McLaurin, you strike gold like that. So for them, you need to. Okay, this is where we are, and we might have to pay a ton to go get this. And why not? Why not them? And again, I get back to the landscape of who they're competing against and where they are as an organization. Like, this could be their time for a while.
So if you are looking at either this draft class or this free agency class, is there anybody that you would have at the very top of the board for Washington that not necessarily, it doesn't have to be like, oh, that's the guy I'd spend a ton of money on. Like I know one guy that a lot of fans like that I like for them is Darius Slayton. I don't know how much Darius Slayton's going to cost. Probably not anything crazy. But like that idea of adding the vertical speed, I'm all on board with trying to pursue Darius Slayton. Is there anybody for Washington that sticks out for you?
Nobody just off the top of my head, I'd say. But for the most part, I don't think Darius Slayton really is going to move the needle for you guys. But when I watch the offense, you do need another person opposite Terry for sure. That was as fantastic as Jaden is in the run game, but you do need maybe one or two other playmakers there because when you're throwing to the Noah Browns of the world, like that's not going to get it done for y'all. There needs to be more there.
Marc Ross, you can catch him, NFL Network, their show Path to the Draft, obviously. They have all kinds of great stuff leading up, not only here in Indianapolis and the coverage all weekend, but leading up to the draft over the next few weeks. Good to meet you in person, man.
For sure.
Marc Ross, everybody. We'll be back with more from Indy next on the Team 980.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. Wrapping up because we got Maryland hoops, Maryland Michigan State coming up here at the top of the hour at 6 o'clock. Pregame starts then. Tip off at 6:30 for this big one. I was actually just talking to Chick Hernandez, of course, amongst many other on the Commanders beat out here in Indy. He's a Terp. I know JP was pumped for the game tonight, but Chick was like, dang, I'm so mad I'm missing this game. So going to be an electric atmosphere out there at Xfinity and going to be a good time tonight. And you'll hear it right here on the Team 980. We have so much more from Indianapolis, even though this is the last you'll hear from me live from Indy. We will play for you on Friday at 4:30, 5:30, and 6:30. 3 interviews that I did earlier today with 3 of the best draft analysts in the game. I did one with Dane Brugler from The Athletic, who was awesome. Once with Lance Erline from The Athletic, who was awesome. And one from Matt Miller of ESPN, who was also awesome. So those 3, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 on Friday. I'm flying back tomorrow during the show. So I believe Linnell will be unleashing his takes tomorrow during the show, Anthony. Is that what's happening?
Yes, sir.
Yep. It did the fire retardant suit that you had to wear during the shows when he filled in for me last week. It survived and you're good. You don't need to re-gear up for tomorrow. You just pull it back out.
Yeah, I think I'll be good.
Okay, all right. I have faith in you. So that'll be Linnell tomorrow, and then you got big-time draft analysts on Friday. I'm also, before I leave tomorrow, though, going to record a few more things. Going to talk to Cynthia Freeland of the NFL Network, who's their analytics guru. She's fantastic. So looking forward to that. And we got Take Command with Trevor Sikkema is out now. So we just have a ton of stuff from Indy, like literally more content than we can fit into the shows. So make sure that you check all that out. All right. Without further ado, though, before we get out of here, it's time for Real Things, Real People Said in Real Microphones.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Anthony. I just realized I was doing my hand signals back to you on the out time off when you weren't on camera. So I just look like an absolutely insane person just signing to myself. Pick your favorite thing in the Real Things folder. We got time probably for just one. Maybe we have time for 2, but pick your favorite one first, just in case.
All right, I'm going to go with Tarazi. She was on The View, and they asked her, why now? Retire.
What made you decide that now was the time?
Oh, God, that's such a hard question. It didn't just happen overnight. I think it was something that, as, the seasons started piling on, 20 seasons, 12 seasons overseas.
Yeah.
I think just being 42 and really doing everything that I could have ever dreamt of doing on a basketball court, I felt full. I was happy. I was ready to move on. I don't know what that looks like, but I was ready.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be with all of that?
Yeah, what else was there to do, really? Like,
I mean,
I think the one thing that I always prided myself on was the work. I loved showing up to work every single day. Like, I got that from my parents. They came to this country in '78, and they always went to work every single morning. Like, my dad would get in that car at 4 a.m., drive an hour and a half, and that's just what you did. You got up and you went to work, and you tried to make the best of it for you and your family. And that's what I tried to do for my teammates, show up for them every single day. And that loyalty to me was always huge.
She's arguably the GOAT. She's one of the best ever to do it. Diana Taurasi retiring yesterday at 42, which means, Anthony, absolutely horrifying thing has happened to a dear friend of mine.
Oh, no. Alicia's the oldest in the WNBA now?
Yeah, that was immediately what happened. So my good friend Alicia Clark, former Mystic, now back with Seattle Storm, 3-time WNBA champ. Now at 37, the oldest player in the WNBA. Alicia, I'm so sorry. Time comes for us all. Time's come for us on the show today. We'll see you tomorrow. Terps, Spartans, next.
You can listen